How is this possible to have two uteruses?
So some women have two full cervixes and two full vaginas. They come together and they fuse together. And a lot of women have a heart-shaped uterus. It was, I think, 59 hours from the time I got my first contraction to the time he was born. And they never quite regulated. They'd be 7 minutes apart, 2 minutes apart, or I'd have three in 2 minutes. And I just couldn't relax and let my body calm down because I felt very unwelcome at the midwife's birthing center.
I wonder if that's because of the uterine didelphys, like it's working twice as hard.
My midwife called me later and explained the situation, that everything was okay, just that we didn't know how labor was going to go. I was very grateful because a lot of women who have this have trouble keeping their babies, and a lot of them go early.
Welcome to the show, ladies. This is so exciting. It's such an exciting day for me today because I have on one of my personal doula clients, Sondra Almeter. Welcome to the show, Sondra.
Thanks for having me.
You guys do not understand how excited I am right now. I just have to tell you because I have been hounding this woman to come on my show for probably a year.
A while.
And she finally booked. And I'm like so excited because she has the most incredible birth story. Actually, stories. The birth that she delivered with me as her doula was a Breech vbac birth at a hospital. And I'm not going to give any more away. I'm just going to tell you that Sondra also has uterine didelphys, which means she has two uteruses, which is one of the reasons her babies tend to be breech because they're smaller than the normal uterus. So Sondra, tell us a little bit about this incredible anomaly you have in your anatomy and this story of your breech birth. And we're all going to geek out. I'm just so excited to geek out with you guys today. This is so fun. Okay, tell us, with your first, you found out at the end of your pregnancy, you had uterine didelphys. What is that?
So I had never heard of it before. Actually, I had started watching Grey's Anatomy while I was pregnant with my firstborn. And one of the first 5 episodes, they have a woman on the show who has 2 uteruses. And she had one baby the babies were definitely different races, which means she wasn't being true to her husband. But I was like, this is wild. Like, I can't even believe this is a thing. I've never heard of this before.
What?
And then later I find out that I have this. Because I thought maybe it was something they made up for the show.
So you saw it on Grey's Anatomy and then discovered after getting pregnant, you have this anomaly.
I have this, yes. So when I was, I think, 37 weeks with my firstborn, they did an internal ultrasound and saw that I had 2 cervixes. So then my midwife called me later and explained the situation, that everything was okay, just that we didn't know how labor was going to go. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I've never even heard of this. So I did a little bit of research on it, and I was very grateful because a lot of women who have this have trouble keeping their babies, and a lot of them go early and have preterm labors and things. But I was full term and everything was healthy and good. So I was very grateful for that.
And how is this possible to have 2 uteruses?
So when baby's developing in the womb, a baby girl, she's got the 2 fallopian tubes and the uterus buds. I don't know what they would be called, but they come together and they fuse together. And there's 4 different stages of this phase then, where there can be 4 different parts of this. And a lot of women have a heart-shaped uterus. That's one of the final stages, where the middle wall will dissolve, but it starts at the cervix and goes up. So some women have 2 full cervixes and 2 full vaginas. That's the hardest stage or whatever, or the first stage of it, because it didn't develop at all. But I have, some people tell me I have 1 cervix, some people tell me I have 2. I'm like, but we know I have 2 uteruses, so I have at least a Y-shaped cervix. Because they can see both openings.
Wow, fascinating. So as the baby is forming in mom's womb, the uterus kind of comes together from 2 into 1, and in your case, it didn't fully come together, so you still have 2 uteruses.
Yes, so there's a wall still between the 2 sides. And so the 2 uteruses are the same as 1, because it's just divided down the middle. So they're quite small. Yeah. So thankfully I've been able to make it to full term with my babies.
What a fascinating anomaly. I just love geeking out about this. And the fact that you were able to go full term is such a blessing tell us about what happened with that first birth quickly. You found out you had the 2 uteruses, and did you have a vaginal delivery? What happened?
So my midwife was still confident that there would be no complications. So I wasn't worried about it. The labor was very long though and intense. It was, I think, 59 hours from the time I got my first contraction to the time he was born. And they never quite regulated to be 7 minutes apart, 2 minutes apart, or I'd have 3 in 2 minutes. And I just couldn't relax and let my body calm down because I felt very unwelcome at the midwife's birthing center. And she sent me home a few times, but I didn't know when to come back because my contractions were just all over the place and intense. So it just felt really, I don't know, just uncomfortable, I guess, there.
And that impacts your hormones and your physiology.
Yeah. And this is our first baby. We didn't know what's going on. Like, we didn't know how to advocate for ourselves. My husband didn't know what to do, didn't know what to expect. And I can't talk. I'm in a different world. So it was quite the experience.
That's like 3 days, 59 hours. That is like being in labor for 3 days. You must have been exhausted.
I started on a Tuesday night and had him Friday morning.
Oh.
So by Thursday night, I know.
Hearing that.
It was long.
Everyone collectively.
Yeah. So I would fall asleep for 5 minutes between contractions, my husband said, and I would wake up, contract, and just pass back out again. So by Thursday night, we went to the hospital so I could get an epidural so I could sleep. And I slept for a few hours, woke up, and then baby was ready to come out, and my body just started pushing, and he came out pretty quickly. He was almost born in call also. My water didn't break till his head, I think, was out. And then my water broke while he was coming out.
Interesting. I wonder, too, if the anatomy, an anomaly made it so that the baby wasn't able to put like even pressure on your cervix, perhaps because you have 2 cervixes, and that can also prolong labor if that baby can't descend and put that pressure on the cervix properly.
Then maybe I'm only getting half the uterus muscles on top pushing down.
Interesting. So, wow. Okay.
I don't know about any of that.
Yeah, it's fun to speculate though, because like when you know about this stuff and you put the dots together, it's like, what if we don't know, we never know for sure, but it all kind of makes like labor's never random, I think, and that's what I love is that we often in the medical model they talk about things happening during labor and delivery, like, oh, well, this just randomly happens and we don't know why. And it's like, but we actually do know a lot. And it all makes sense the more you understand about the body and the physiology and the anatomy and why these things may tend to go one direction or another. And so what a very trying, difficult first birth for you. Yeah. And you wanted a big family, correct? And so you had the second one. What happened with your second?
So my firstborn was so big, at the time we found out I had 2 uteruses, they couldn't tell which side he was in. But with my secondborn, we knew to look for this early enough and knew that she was in my right side. And she was breech and she never flipped. And I wasn't given any other options except C-section. Because the hospital I was going to didn't perform breech births or anything like that. So they just did a C-section. And my husband and I honestly were thinking maybe this will be easier than the 3-day labor.
Yeah, that probably sounds like your ticket out of
It did a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, I guess we'll try it. It felt so strange though, knowing the day my baby was going to be born. It was so strange. Because people are like, when do you do? I'm like, oh, this is the date. And they're like, well, you can't plan that. I'm like, this is planned.
You kind of can.
They're like, I'm not getting into this with you. Because then you got to get into everything else. And so anyways, so yeah, we had her at the C-section. On the way to the hospital, though, I started contracting. So it felt nice that my body was at least laboring. Yeah. So I knew she was born, she was ready.
Yeah. And how was the C-section for you in recovery?
I did not know what to expect, but I did not 1 minute enjoy that C-section. It was, I don't know, honestly, a little bit traumatic. They like Velcro my arms down and I'm claustrophobic, so that felt terrible. And then the person giving me the spinal tap was new and poked me 5 times in the back and they're like, hold still. I'm like, you're hitting a nerve. I can't.
No.
And then I felt it and she goes, oh, I just hit the bone. I'm like, yeah, yep.
Okay, wow.
And then my finger was on a monitor for my heart rate, and I could hear it through the whole room, my heart rate going up every time I knew they were going to stick me with the needle. And I'm like, they can hear you panicking. Deep breaths, deep breaths.
This sounds awful. It's like, what are you going to choose? A 3-day labor or like getting poked in the spine repeatedly?
Yeah. So I know some people's go very well. A friend of mine, she's like, you got poked how many times? I'm like, I didn't know that wasn't normal. She's like, they only did once for me. I'm like, oh, it must be nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, of course it's cold in there because it's an operating room. So yeah, the medicine they gave me made me very ill and I almost threw up. And so then they gave me a counter medicine for that. And then they were like running around like, where is he? Where is he? I'm like, are they talking about my husband? They couldn't find him. He was sitting in the room where they put him, waiting. By the time they found him and brought him in, they were pulling her out. He almost missed it.
Oh my gosh. I think that happens more often than we realize.
Oh, for sure. It has to.
I promise that it's not the first time I've heard that story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So not a great experience there either. And
no.
You live on a farm in the country. And I remember when we met, you telling me about this, saying, I'm a farm girl. I can't do that again. Like, I need to be back working my land. I can't recover.
It's hard enough having a newborn and learning how to nurse with that baby because it's different with every kid, and then to have major surgery on top of it. And it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough.
And we don't have good postpartum care for moms with C-sections. I mean, for any mom, but especially those who have C-sections. And it's a travesty in this country, the lack of post-op care we give them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they still want you to take your baby to the doctor like 2 days later and, come in, for your checkups and everything. And it's a lot.
Yeah. And they'd be telling you like bed rest if you were in a hospital, or you'd still be in the hospital recovering.
Or if it was a surgery for anything else. Your appendix or something.
Yeah, if you had major abdominal surgery, they'd be saying, no, don't walk for like a week.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
It's your mom. Slap a Band-Aid on it and keep going.
It's terrible. I'm laughing and it's terrible.
I know.
We love all our C-section mamas. You guys are warriors. You are warriors.
Yeah. Yes.
So, okay. So let's go to baby number 3. How did you even find me?
A friend of mine had been watching your page for a while, and she just sent me a post, and she was like, you should check out her page. It's really great. And I was pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant, I think. And I was looking at your posts and you had your location on there. And I said, did you see she's based out of Rochester? And she was like, I did not. I'm like, I think that's cool. You were also on a vacation, I think. Or you were on a vacation when I found you. So your posts and stories were from somewhere else.
Okay.
And then when you got home, I was like, oh, you're based in Rochester. I'm like, that's pretty close, actually.
Yeah, because you're like 45 minutes from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I might reach out to her and see if she's still taking any doula clients or anything. And I made sure to throw in there that I was trying for a Breech vbac in a hospital to get your attention, and it worked.
Oh, it worked. I wanted, because I think at the time I hadn't seen, like, in person a Breech vbac. I've, of course, seen lots of videos, but I was like, of course I'll be there. And I remember this conversation. I think you said something about, like, I just want someone that can, like, here's what I want for my birth. Here's what I'm envisioning. I don't even know if it's possible. Everyone calls me crazy. Everyone's saying you can't have a vbac Breech in the hospital. I'm trying to find a provider. I just want some support of someone who thinks I'm not crazy or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I was like, I'm your girl. I'm your doula.
Yeah.
I will help you. I will advocate for you. We will figure out how to get the birth you're dreaming of. And it was a wild ride. I remember you were on the hunt for a provider who would even take you as a client.
Yeah. So I went to I knew the midwives I was originally seeing for my second born. Their hospital did not allow them to do VBACs there. So I went to a different midwife place that my sister and my sister-in-law both had used and were very happy with. I never got to see the midwives for some reason there. They kept sending me to the OBGYN, and no offense, but he was a man, and I didn't really want that because I'm like, I know you know textbook stuff, but what do you know emotionally and physically about all of this? And he just made me so uncomfortable. And every appointment, I was just so like bummed about everything. And the last appointment I was at, he was talking to me, put his hand on my upper thigh. And I was like, So I called my husband crying. He's like, why? He's like, I didn't know you were this upset. He's like, you don't have to stay there. I'm like, you're right. I don't have to stay there. And I don't know why. I was like, this is it.
We get in our heads like we're stuck with this provider.
Yeah, and just grin and bear it and figure it out. And
right. And it's not true.
Yeah.
You always have options. And women tell me this all the time, like, oh, I can't. I live in the country. You lived in the country. Your local hospital was a country hospital. They're like, no, we don't do vbacs and we don't do breech. And you had an amazing midwife. And I remember her even saying, well, technically, we cannot do a vaginal breech delivery,
but I technically can't turn you away if you show up pushing. Because I asked her, I'm like, what happens if I can't make it to the hospital? She's like, what are you asking me? I'm like, nothing. Off the record, though, like, what happens if I actually can't make it to Rochester? Because this town was in between. And she's like, I can't legally turn you away. And I was like, good to know.
Right. So I remember you actually were considering just like showing up, pushing.
Yeah.
But then, so you decided the OB you were with, you're like, I don't feel comfortable with him.
Yeah. So at 30 weeks, I switched back to my midwives I had with my second born. And then knowing that I would just have to go to a different hospital and not have my midwives, but ones that they were affiliated with at that hospital. I was like, well, so my midwife was awesome through all of this too, because she was even looking around for a provider that would help with breech births.
Yeah.
And since she was not, she didn't want to do it herself, but she didn't think, just because she didn't have training, but she didn't think breech was any more dangerous with people that were trained. And so between her encouragements and yours, I was like, this is safe if I can find the right people. And I think you actually found the people at Strong. They had you emailed me or called me, or like, I found someone finally, and a team of 8 doctors that routinely do breech deliveries. And because they do twins there all the time.
Yeah, I'm getting like tingles just hearing you tell this story. Like getting goosebumps, because I remember it was such an important decision to make for you. And it really meant the difference of having the birth you're dreaming of or having a repeat cesarean, because very few providers will take a VBAC breech client that wants to deliver vaginally. And so this was a hunt. And I remember telling you about this, and it was a team of doctors who were trained in breech. And that's really important. If you're going to deliver breech vaginally, you want your provider to be comfortable. Otherwise, they're going to intervene and get scared and think that something's wrong and try to do all these interventions that aren't really necessary. They need to feel confident in and experienced in breech delivery. And this team, I remember I didn't know them personally, but when you met them, what was your first impression? You talked to the doctor, the head, like.
Yeah, my husband and I went there. I think we had a 2.5 hour consult with him, and he almost said, but realized he wasn't allowed to say it. Because we went for an ultrasound there, and they did measurements and everything. I'm full term at this point. I believe I was 37 or 38 weeks when we met with him, and he was saying like the baby's shoulders are so wide. He goes, actually, it might be better, and he's like, everything's gonna be okay. Because he couldn't actually say the baby was going to be better off coming breech instead of getting shoulder dystocia. But he wasn't allowed to actually say that, but he started to.
Wow, because he didn't want to scare you?
No, because I don't think he's legally allowed to say breech is safer in some instances, because my baby's shoulders were wide, and they were very wide when he came out. But we could have been stuck with shoulder dystocia if he came out head first, actually. So I think, God had that planned out.
Yeah, so it was basically, in your case, potentially safer for him to come out butt first.
Yes.
In that situation. Wow. Yeah, I remember he gave you all the information. Like, that's a long appointment.
It was. Oh, yeah, it was definitely informed consent here. Like, at the end of it, I was so, like my brain was just shot. And I was like, well, we can't do this. Like, it felt so overwhelming. My husband's like, no. These are the numbers he gave us, but this is what it means. And I was like, it was like 0.01% more dangerous or something if you had I'm like, that's not more dangerous. Yeah. If you have someone that knows what they're doing.
Yes. The fact that he gave you all of the data for like every outcome, and here's your risk of this, here's your risk of that, here's what could happen here. Like, that is true informed consent. And then he let you make your own decision. Yep. He didn't say, that's why we're going to do a repeat cesarean. He was like, here's all the information. You are an autonomous person. What do you want to do? And I was like, hallelujah, these doctors still exist.
Yes, I know. So I was really happy with him. And then he didn't attend to the delivery or anything, but I also loved the doctor we did have. And half the nurses in the room, there were so many people in there, which I didn't know until you showed me pictures and videos later. I thought there was like 3 other people that showed up, and there was like 15.
There's so many. Because it happens so rarely that they get to witness this.
I know, they all came in to watch.
They all came in to watch. And I think, and even your doctor, I remember you saying he was kind of surprised that you still decided to do a vaginal birth, because most women and couples choose C-section, probably thinking this is going to be a lot easier after they get all the data and all the stats, and they don't want to risk it or for whatever reason there is. And you were like very confident in your decision that you really wanted a vaginal birth and that would be better for you. And so he was like, well, okay, I guess we're doing it that way.
Yeah.
And so at the hospital, even though this is a breech team and their doctors are trained in breech, it still happens so rarely. So especially to a woman with uterine didelphys and a VBAC. So I think everyone on the floor was like, she's in labor. We're going to go
They
observe.
were all in there.
They were in your room. Like, I hope no one else is giving birth at that time, because
Right?
you had an audience.
I did, yeah.
And you went into labor on your own. How far along were you?
I think it was 2 days after my due date.
Amazing. Okay.
So, and my mom showed up randomly the night before, and she was like, I'm here to take the kids. I'm like, I didn't ask you to. She's like, oh, I thought you texted me. So I was like, okay.
Like the way that God orchestrated every detail of your labor and delivery, it like still blows my mind to this day. The way you found, like we found this provider, the one that was on call, the way they supported you, like every detail, like you could not have planned it this well.
Yeah. Oh, and half the staff that was there for the delivery was saying like, oh yeah, my babies were breech, or I was a breech baby. And like, I couldn't believe how many people were telling me that after the delivery. They're like, this is totally normal. And it was so refreshing to hear that at a hospital.
Yeah. Amazing.
So if anyone's in the New York area, Strong Memorial in Rochester knows what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. Yes, good job. We will give you a shout out.
Yes.
So being in labor, what was that like with this birth? I remember you tell them, but I remember bits and pieces, but we want to hear from you.
I remember when you came over afterwards and went through your notes, and I was like, this is not how I remembered it. And you and my husband were like, this is how long things took. This is what went on. And I was like, oh, I was in another land.
As you should be.
Yeah. So I never experienced my water breaking, because with my firstborn, like I said, he was almost born in the sac. And then with my secondborn, it was a C-section. So 5:30 in the morning with my third, my water broke in bed. And I was like hitting my husband. I'm like, wake up. Like, my water is like, it's everywhere. And he's like, okay. I'm like, get a towel now. He's like, okay. I'm like, no, right now. Like, I could just feel it just pouring out into the bed. And I was so grossed out. I'm like, this is my bed. And I'm like, and now we're leaving. And how's it going to get clean when I get home? You know, things you don't need to worry about. But you're a woman, so you do. And then I couldn't get a hold of you because my cell phone kept, like, I don't know, it kept breaking on me, and I couldn't get a hold of you because you were in do not disturb mode. But I forgot to give you my home phone number, so I kept trying to call you.
Right,
I didn't know when to go.
Right, because I programmed my phone for my clients that your phone number will patch through even when it's on Do Not Disturb, but you were calling me on a different phone line.
Yep, because my cell phone was broken, and I was like, I can't get a hold of her. I don't know when we're supposed to go.
I forgot
my labor hadn't
that.
started either, because I was like, well, what happens? So I think labors took about an hour to start up then, and I finally got a hold of you, and you just talked me through it a little bit, like what to expect, because I don't know. This was new for me. And I didn't had a doula before either. So then I think around 7:30 we headed to the hospital, and I was so excited. Like labor, they were just gentle squeezes, which was not the same way that my other labor started with my firstborn. And I was like singing and dancing a little bit in the car and got some food and coffee on the way. And then we got to the hospital, and this is 2001. So this is still during COVID things. And so that like slowed labor down a little bit, going through some of the COVID protocol things. And I literally almost slugged the nurse when she did the swab up my nose, because it felt like it went straight up to my brain. And I was like, it needs to stop. And I remember I moved my arm to shove her, and I was like, you can't push her. Like, I remember last second, I'm not allowed to hit her. But I was like, this needs to stop.
It's so invasive. I
Yeah.
remember that too. That's a period of time I
'Cause they-
never do without.
Yeah. Because they want women laboring to labor with a mask on. You're like, I already feel like I'm dying. I don't need to feel.
And now we're going to stick a swab up to your brain. That's what you want to experience in the middle of labor, of course.
Yeah. Oh my word. It was a lot. Because I was nervous about doing a hospital birth during COVID as well.
Yeah.
And just with the procedures and all that stuff. And because there were some horror stories before that too, of like babies being taken away from their moms if the mom had COVID and stuff like that. So that was, yeah. So we had prayed for everyone to be healthy, so we didn't have to worry about those kinds of things. But so, anyways, I started labor. Labor started picking up again, and then I remember I'm just like waiting for you, like nobody. We cannot get further without Karen here. We need her, and I just remember being like we just have to wait. And as soon as we got there, I remember being like, okay, we can proceed now.
Okay, buddy, now you can have this baby.
Now we have the professional here. We know what we're doing.
No, girl, but you have the magic sauce.
Well, which I would forget about until you would whisper sweet nothings in my ear and I was like, you're right. And then I would get in a new headspace or whatever. But yeah, because I remember you brought these little slippers and little slipper socks and put them on my feet. And I was like, oh, that was nice. Well, I'm like, it's just so funny what your brain does and doesn't remember.
I don't remember that at all. That's awesome. I just remember you laboring on your hands and knees in the hospital bed. And we didn't know for sure, if they would let you, who would be the doctor on call number one.
Oh, that's right. I told the doctor that I wanted to deliver on my hands and knees. And he was like, we'll see about that, because he thought I was going to end up with an epidural. And I was like, I am not going to end up with an epidural because
You tell him.
Because I was like, I'm not going to, because I know it's better if I can make it.
We tried that.
I've tried that before. I don't like needles. I hate needles. I don't want to do it if I don't have to.
Yeah.
So.
And were they pressuring you to deliver in the OR? Or no, that wasn't.
They said if the baby's heart rate was not doing well, they were going to consider that. But I think his heart rate seemed fine the whole time. And then we had that amazing nurse who went. I think yes, you were like, find her a different monitor right now. And she was like, okay. And she ran to a different wing and brought back the one so I could labor in the shower.
Yes.
And then we flooded the bathroom on accident into the room, which I didn't know about until later because I was sitting on the exercise ball and it was plugging the drain.
Completely forgot. I remember that. There was water, an inch of water.
Just everywhere.
Into the
which I didn't know about till later. Because I remember every once in a while coming back to consciousness and being like, oh, there's a new nurse. And then going back.
And I think they were all probably cleaning it up at one point.
Because you're like, we need some towels.
Here's the thing, ladies. General rule for labor and delivery. Forgiveness is better than permission.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
If you want to do something, just do it and apologize later.
Yep.
Not that we meant to flood the room, but you know what? You wanted the shower. I'm going to make it happen for my clients. You didn't have a monitor that could go in the shower. So I'm like, we need a monitor, wireless monitor, so this lady can get in the shower and get some relief. And then, of course, we flood the hospital room. But, you just take one thing at a time.
Oh, it's so funny.
It was great. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. So you had the birth ball in there. We had all. I
had another peanut ball I was leaning on, and then I honestly thought I was in there for 40 minutes. And when we went through our notes after the birth, you were in there for 4 hours, and I was like, "Are you sure?"
Maybe that's why it flooded.
I thought it was an hour tops. I definitely didn't realize it was that long.
Time doesn't exist in labors.
It doesn't. I just remember thinking just to relax my throat and to just let the sounds out and just be controlled and the breathing and just that's all I thought about the whole time. And then every once in a while
you were
sneaks
doing
in.
So good. You were just in the zone.
I remember at one point, because I stopped contracting for more than 10 seconds. And you're like, I remember hearing you tell my husband, I have never seen a labor like this. Because my contractions don't stop. They just don't. There's no time in between where I can just move or have a drink or anything. Because I remember you guys keep trying to get me to drink, but I was always contracting. And then you guys would think I was at an end of a contraction when I was going into the next phase of the contraction. Because you guys would start talking to me. I'm like, I just went to a whole new level and shush. And then you guys, because I would get so quiet, you guys thought I finished a contraction.
Because you were managing them so well. We didn't rat. That sometimes, like, oh, she's still having a contraction.
I was like, I'm not ready. But yeah, I remember. And then I threw up. And then you were like, this is good. I'm like, it doesn't feel good, Karen.
Another doula secret. We get excited when you have to poop or throw up.
Yeah.
We know what that means.
And then,
yes, I forgot about your never-ending contractions. And I think I was like, I wonder if that's because of the uterine didelphys. Like, it's working twice as hard to dilate and push the baby down.
Yeah, I don't know. Because that's what it was like for part of my firstborn's labor also, where there was just no breaks at all whatsoever.
But what was it different than your firstborn, in how the contractions felt or just in general?
I would say it was the same intensity, but the first one, I never felt like I got into a rhythm or just relaxed with it. But I think they felt mostly the same.
Okay.
So
you were coping much better. You were relaxed. You didn't seem like you were in pain or suffering at all. It just seemed like you had to focus really strongly on staying in that zone.
Yeah. No, I would say there was no pain until it was time to actually physically push him out. But I remember the nurses telling you and my husband that, like, when she starts pushing, you have to call us because we need to get a whole team in here and we have to call the 2 doctors in.
Yeah. And we were nervous, like, are they going to disrupt your flow? Because if we have a whole team of people descend upon your room, how is that going to affect you? Are they going to take over and try to put you in a certain position and do interventions and freak out? So I was nervous about that. I remember, I don't know if I communicated that to you, but I was just kind of aware that this could be treated like an emergency once pushing starts and it could change everything.
Yeah. So I remember I started pushing in the shower, like, really intensely, like, immediately. I went from just contracting to oh no, we're pushing. So I remember telling you guys, like, I'm pushing. And you're like, okay, we have to get out of the shower now. And I was like, no, I don't want to. But I had heard that we needed to, like, that had made it through my brain fog. So we put me on the end of the hospital bed. And we had flipped the end up so I could lean on the back of the bed and I was on my knees also.
Yep.
And then I ended up laboring like that for 2 more hours, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it did disrupt my flow, just moving me.
No, I think it was just your body had to labor the baby down. I don't think it disrupted anything because you didn't stall. It didn't seem like anything was prolonged. That's actually very normal for, like,
okay.
You might feel grunty or pushy, but then your body is laboring that baby down your birth canal. And that can take an hour, maybe probably longer in your case. Because, like you said, you have half a uterus pushing that baby down. So it probably took longer, I would guess, because you had half a uterus pushing the baby down. So it just probably took longer because of the anatomy, not necessarily because of you having to change positions, although that could affect it. But I would say, unless you were, like, feeling unsafe and uncomfortable by everything happening, that can definitely slow labor down too. But you seem to be just on your hands and knees in the bed, like, in your zone. And I was nervous. The doctors, once they got called in, would tell you to, like, get on your back. And we didn't.
I don't think I would have listened to them at that point. Honestly, I've been like no, because I had watched so many videos and I was looking at, like, Ina May's stuff and reading her stories. And, like, if you're doing breech, you want to be on your hands and knees because it's just the best position. And so I wasn't going to move even if they tried telling me I couldn't move anyways. I was stuck there.
Makes me so happy when my clients are like, no, this is how I'm doing it. Like, I'm not looking for your permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. When my clients get to that point, I'm like, I have done my job.
Yes. Yeah. So I also remember, my husband didn't know which playlist I wanted for my music, and I remember you saying at one point, this is the strangest birth playlist I've ever heard. I'm like, and in my head I'm like, because this isn't the right one, but I forgot to tell him which one it was. And then I forgot to tell him that I did want my headphones. Well, it's not that I forgot. I couldn't physically speak. Like, there was never a break where I could be like, I want this. I couldn't speak at all the whole time. And I wanted to so much. Because I remember after I had the baby, I was like, oh my gosh.
You were incredible the whole time. Yeah. So what was that like? You're laboring on your hands and knees.
And then I would start contracting, and I could feel you leap on the bed and give me counter pressure on my hips. And it made my body like convulse and push so much harder when you did that for every time. For whatever reason, I would just be contracting. And then as soon as you would come up there and start pushing, my body would be like, oh my gosh, we're pushing harder now. And I was like, but I think it helped move things along because then it felt like good at the same time. It just was super intense.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I remember that. And I think that I was so impressed. Were the doctors in the room at that point? Because I feel like they let us do whatever you wanted to do.
I think they came in and checked every once in a while, but they weren't in there until I was like, until we could tell the baby was really descending. Because I just could feel him squeak his way down. Every like 10 contractions, I could feel him just move just a little bit. And I was like, this is taking forever. I was like, this must be because he's coming butt first with his feet up. And his one foot was down.
Yes, and it's a softer surface, so that's another reason breech can take longer. Is like with a hard head, a skull, putting pressure on your cervix, it's going to open your cervix faster. But if it's a soft, squishy butt, it's kind of like your uterus has to work a little harder to push that baby down.
Yes, pushing him was definitely more difficult than my firstborn. My firstborn, I feel like just shot out of me. Once his head was out, like he was just out. And this one, I was like, this is taking forever. But I knew that because, oh my word, I had somebody tell me that their brother had brain damage because he was born breech. I was like,
oh, gosh.
No offense, but you were born in the 60s and things were a lot different then. People didn't know not to drink and smoke and things like that while you were pregnant then. I'm like, that's not why.
Or the doctors could have tried pulling him out with forceps. Like, we don't know.
Or who knows? Yeah, I'm like, that's not the only it's not just because he was breech. There was other factors. But I was
there was clearly other complications going on there. Yeah, I know. And they just scare women. They tell, what do you think to tell a woman who's pregnant with a breech baby a story like that?
She was helping me.
Oh, it makes me so mad. That's not what you need in your head.
Oh, but I remember looking into that though. And there can be, but if you don't get the head out within 5 minutes or so.
Yep.
But so I remember when I got to the head part, because everything else took forever. And I remember.
Well, let's back up a second, because from my vantage point, you don't see what's going on. You have no idea. You're just heads at the front of the bed.
I was looking at the floor, at the wall. I literally, or my hands, and my hands hurt so bad because I had gripped so hard on
and you're still on the hospital bed with hands and knees, butt in the air. So the doctors, all the 15 nurses are all behind you. They're all in awe too. And nobody is panicking. Nobody rushed in, alarms beeping, took over, all these things I had in my head. This is potentially could happen. None of that happened. They were so calm. They were so respectful. They were even whispering to each other. I remember your OB, who was a woman who attending the birth, one of the women on this breech delivery team who was experienced in breech birth was training what I assume is a resident, another woman there, how to do the maneuvers and techniques of the breech birth. And because you were upside down on your hands and knees, probably different than what their training may have included, they were like, oh, she's upside down, so we have to rotate the baby this way. And for the majority of that baby coming out, and I actually filmed it, and it was with your permission, I think. I think I showed it to you. Yeah, showed it to you later because it's fascinating. It was about 8 minutes. Probably felt like 2 hours, but it was about 8 minutes from the first foot coming out to the full head being delivered, and it probably felt like an eternity. And there were moments. My word,
I was like, "This is never going to end."
It's never, because
my body stopped contracting. It took a break in between, and I had the one doctor who was like, "Okay, push 1, 2." I'm like, "Shh, I'm not even contracting." And you're like, and you would come and be like, "Just do whatever your body says," and I'm like.
The rogue doula. We just gotta, I was like, you're doing great. Stay yourself.
I was like, yeah. I'm like, hello, lady. I made it this far. I got, shush. Stop talking to me.
Yeah, every once in a while, and somebody would quip up and be like, they'd go into their protocol. Okay, hold your breath and push 1, 2, 3.
I'm like, go away.
clearly.
But I could
read
tell
the
she
room.
wasn't the doctor. I could tell she wasn't the main doctor, and I
right.
listened to the main doctor. Like, I
And
could
she-
just tell who
yeah.
was who.
And she was actually very helpful, very quiet, very respectful, like let you do your thing. And
Everything's going well, and like, you know, like good coloring, good everything. And she was just really encouraging on this. And then,
so let me just give the play-by-play from what I was seeing. It was the foot comes out first, which at first I'm like, wait, is that a footling breech? Is that bad? And no,
they told me I wouldn't they wouldn't deliver a footling breech.
Right. But this was not footling. Just because the foot comes out first, the footling breech, that baby's actually extended, like the leg is straight, and like in the womb that they're in a much longer position that makes it not as safe. But in this case, it was just the foot that came out first. The butt was still down by your perineum. So it wasn't technically a footling breech.
I know. It like came out like this, like he was the baby's butt and the foot. So I'm like, well, that's why it took forever, because there was also a thigh here and a leg, and it was so hard to push him out. And then all of a sudden, in the video, all of a sudden his leg just went flying out.
Yeah, so his foot came out first, and then it was a giant ball sack. And you didn't know.
We didn't know what we were having.
And then so everyone is like, well, we know the gender because we see a foot and a ball sack, which is your brain is like doing a 180 because you're like, what? Looking at there's a foot coming out of her vagina. This isn't like what my brain is used to seeing when I'm watching birth videos, and then the balls, and then I think the butt started coming, and then the foot flopped out. Yeah. And then the other foot, we had one leg hanging out, and I think the other leg kind of slowly came down with
splits. Yeah.
It was doing like a split. And so you had to push out the butt and the thigh and leg. That's what, that's a wider circumference. So, you know.
Yes.
So, and I remember the torso taking forever. You probably were like, what is happening? Because it was like inching along.
Actual inches, yes. Yeah. Oh, my word. I was like, why isn't it just coming out now? And I was like, because we're still getting wider and wider, because we had to get through his rib cage and then his huge shoulders that we knew he had.
Yeah.
And it took so long. But I knew every bit of this process was good, because I heard them talk about the cord and that there was good pulse and everything. Yeah. And I could hear his heartbeat on the monitor too. Like I knew everything was fine.
Yeah. It took a little while. I mean, 8 minutes isn't actually that long, relatively speaking, to push out a baby. I've seen it take much longer in vaginal births.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment, it feels forever. But the doctors were so patient, and they were just literally holding that baby up to kind of.
Because we came to the head, then neck, and then my body just stopped. Yeah. And I was like, okay, wait, we know we have 5 minutes safely before anything starts to go wrong now, where the head is just stuck in the canal, because then the cervix is a little bit tighter on the neck. But I was like, hold on, I know I have 5 minutes here. We're not going to worry about this. We're just going to relax and just wait, because obviously my body's not going to leave the baby here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they were doing some maneuvering too to help turn the baby.
Yep. And then they just held the baby because they weren't worried about it either.
Yeah, they weren't.
And then
I could tell they were talking amongst each other, and the doctor was explaining things to the resident. Okay, do this. Oh no, you got to turn it this way because it's upside down, and see this tone. This is good. We're seeing, the breath here. The baby's stable. You could tell everything was normal, and they were having this. It was like a teaching moment, but it was also so beautiful because they were also like trusting you in your body and not rushing, not freaking out, not panicking at all.
Yeah, it was nice. And then all of a sudden, my body was just like, okay, one more. And just a big contraction, and just pushed him out. And that was such a relief to have him gone from that area. Like, there's no more room here. It's just done. We're done.
The best feeling in the world, ladies.
Yes. Oh, my word. And then, honestly, I thought they took him for like 2 seconds and handed him right back. I didn't realize how long it took me to reel myself back into the present. But it was 7 minutes, I think, when we went through the timestamps on the pictures and things. By the time they brought him back, it took me that long to turn over. I thought, after I had him, I just turned over. But it took me 7 minutes to come back to reality.
Wow. I don't remember that. But they must have been, I don't remember what they were doing. Maybe helping,
they were
just sure baby was breathing and
cleaning the airways, because he didn't get it shoved out the way they do in their head first. So they had just made sure everything was good.
Yeah.
And
that's an important thing to know for women, for those listening, for babies, or if you have a breech birth. In a normal head down delivery, the compression squeezes a lot of the fluids out of the baby's lungs as it's descending down the birth canal. But because in a breech birth, it doesn't have the opportunity to squeeze in the same way. So breech babies tend to struggle more with fluid in the lungs and respiratory issues. So they were probably working on clearing his lungs and suctioning him, making sure he was stable and breathing, which I don't remember.
I think they told me that at the appointment, at the consultation.
Yep. That they would, maybe work on
that they would have
bit.
to just do a few extra things and just do a few extra checks.
Yeah, but there was nothing emergent or anything.
No, nothing was wrong at all.
And they did it right there on the bed. And then I remember them. What happened next?
Then they tried to give me Pitocin to get my
uterus,
my placenta out.
Placenta. Sorry.
I was gonna say uterus.
Keep those.
I was like, this is wrong. I do in fact need both.
I do know. I'm a birth professional. I know what comes out, not the uterus.
Yeah. So they were like,
yes,
and you were like, and I remember you said to the nurse, you're like, does she need that? And you turned to me like, do you want that? I'm like, no, I just had a baby. Like, I'm not broken. And they're like, oh, okay. And they were like, we don't care. This is just protocol or whatever. And I was like, no, I don't need that. And then as soon as they handed him back to me, my body started contracting again with the oxytocin levels and pushed my placenta out. And then the birth high I experienced was unreal. I thought it was floating on a cloud. I couldn't stop laughing and crying. And I was just so excited and happy that we did it. That we had done this crazy birth that didn't seem all that crazy until you start talking about it more and how this doesn't happen very often. And then the doctors were like, yeah, this, the breech vbac part doesn't happen very often. And just, it was amazing that we did it. Like we found the providers and we just...
You did it.
Well, me and the baby, I guess, is what in my head, like, because he had to cooperate too. I don't know.
You did it. You rocked it. And you got the birth you dreamed of, that you planned for, that you were praying for. It all happened. And I think even so much of it was outside your control, but just like I said earlier, the way that God lined everything up, and that you just surrendered to the process and you trusted your body. You weren't afraid to advocate for yourself and say, no, I don't need Pitocin. No, I'm on my hands and knees. Like, figure it out.
We're not moving.
You owned your power, you owned your birth, and you made it happen, and you did it.
Yeah, the nurses are very excited, and they're just, I don't know, it was great to hear everybody be like, this was great, we were so happy we were here, and
show opening, it was like that level of excitement, because it was so rare to witness this. I mean, and if you think about it, most of what they see, probably 90% plus, are all medicalized births, standard epidural, force pushing, a lot of interventions. To see that something like this, most hospital providers will never see even in their whole career. And so, like, what a gift that you get to show them what vaginal breech VBAC birth can look like.
It was cool because then the nurse I had for postpartum, or at least right after I had the baby, she was going to school to become a midwife. And so she was just excited just to see this side of it too.
Yeah. And these nurses probably had seen other births if they're on that breech team. But still, what a beautiful thing to witness. And for her to, as going into midwifery, I love how even the people God brings, and that I've seen that happen in other births too, with women who like prayed in advance. Like, I want this birth to give glory to God. Like, I want this to like be a witness to everyone who's there. And the nurses, even like the doctors that God brings, like, you can just see their faces light up, and you can see how meaningful it is to them to witness a birth like this. And it's just, I love how God even uses supernatural, like powerful births like this as a testimony to impact even the nurses and doctors. It's so profound. So amazing. You did it. I remember it's just like the best day, like the best high ever.
It was awesome. And then this was my first unmedicated birth. And then I just couldn't believe how alert the baby was. He was awake for 2 hours just looking at us. And in a room full of all those people, my husband came down and said, like good job or something like that to me. And the baby just whipped his head straight to my husband. Because he knew his voice too. Out of the whole room of people, And it was just so special that, I don't know, it was great.
You got the birth you dreamed of.
Yeah, the birth high and everything, and it was amazing. I loved it.
I was cheering you on all the way. It was powerful, and thank you as a doula, like, to even have the privilege to witness that and support you and be part of your birth story. Thank you for trusting me to be there with you in this sacred moment. It was truly my pleasure, my privilege.
Yeah.
Tell it. And you had a fourth baby after this.
Did.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like we can't end the show here, you guys. It gets better. No, I was not there to support you. Unfortunately, I had moved out of state by then, but we still need to give airtime to the story, because truly it gets better, you guys. Just wait. Tell us what happened with your fourth.
So this baby was a surprise, and it just took a lot to like wrap my head around it mentally and emotionally and things. And I honestly, it was a little bit of a mental block for me that you had moved, because I'm like, well, who the heck's supposed to help me now? And I went through that for a bit, and then I was like, I should just probably take her course again, just to get reminders and stuff. And I think I did one of your 2-hour short sessions that you did live. I signed up for, and just that was enough.
Oh, like the masterclass live that I did?
Yes, it was a masterclass. I did that. 3
keys to a pain-free birth.
Yep.
And I'll link that below. It's not, once it's out, so you guys can watch it too.
Yeah. And that was enough for me to remember that my body did this, and that I didn't do it because you were there.
Yes.
Because you had given me the tools and information and encouragement that I needed, but I still did it.
Yes.
I think I emailed you about that too. Just like I can do this, like, even if you're not here, and which was good, because it ended up being nobody was there. So my midwife had to move out of state because New York doesn't love home midwives very much, and she moved to Pennsylvania. So I was traveling 2 hours one way. 2 hours and 15 minutes one way for my visits with her, and I was going to deliver there as well. Now, in my defense, my track record was longer labors, 59 hours, and then the next one was 15 hours. So I was like, I'll have plenty of time to get there. And she was, are you worried about it? I'm like, no. I'm like, I can't, even if I can't imagine it being shorter than 7 hours, I'll make it. I'll be there. So she ended up being out of town, which we knew going into it. I was due in August, but she was taking the whole month of July off, and she had 2 other midwives come in to take over for her. But at first, she wasn't going to have anybody there, so she was like, I can't take you. And I'm like, well, I've never been early, so like, I don't know. I was like, I should be fine. And so
and is this one Breech as well?
No, he is not. This one was not Breech, and he was in my left uterus, which I'm pretty sure my firstborn was also in my left uterus, judging by how it felt, like where they were kicking and how all of that felt.
So technically, now this is what we were geeking out about this before we hit record.
Yes.
Because you had your secondborn was in your right uterus. That's the one that you had a C-section with. Mm-hmm. And if this fourth one is in your left uterus, technically it's not
It was not a VBAC. That's what when we went for the consultation for my third baby, and we asked him about that, he's like, no, technically, because he had the records of where they made the incisions on my uterus, and he said that it wasn't touching the left side. So he said, technically, this would not be a VBAC.
Yeah, and I remember your doctor, telling me your doctor was less concerned about, or was it less concerned about the VBAC than the breech, or more less concerned about the breech than the VBAC aspect?
Less concerned about the breech than the VBAC.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Isn't that amazing that like a doctor trained in breech is like, no, breech is normal. Breech is physiological. Your body, like, I'm not even concerned about that. I'm more concerned about the risks with the VBAC. Mm-hmm. The way that doctors freak women out about breech. And this doctor's like, no, that's not even a concern of mine. It's the VBAC is a little bit more concerning, but it wasn't even in the same uterus. Mm-hmm. So, and this one was in the left uterus, not the right one where you had the incision.
Correct. This was not a VBAC.
Okay, so the third was a VBAC.
Yes, the third was, but the fourth one was not a VBAC.
Okay, that's why the doctor was more concerned about the VBAC, because it was in the same uterus as
Yes, I'm sorry, I misheard you.
No, it's the left and the right. My brains are mush. We're still on the birth high. It's okay.
Yes.
So this one with you, number 4, keep up. Are you keeping up, people? Number 4, we're in the left side this time. This is what's so fascinating, right? Like, so it is technically not a VBAC, so you don't have to worry about any of those risks. And you're having a home birth, and it's head down. So what happened? What, like, you go into labor, and you're like, I have plenty of time.
Yeah. So, a week before my due date, some contractions started, but I didn't know they were contractions. I just thought maybe I had diarrhea because it felt the same. So I went to the bathroom and did have diarrhea. And I was like, oh, okay, that was that. And then I had some more. And then,
which is also a sign labor might be starting soon.
And then in between, I was like, I think there are some contractions, but they were very strong. They started stronger than any of the other labors had started. And so my daughter was going to come with. We were going to do a water birth, and she was going to come and get in the pool and help me catch the baby. This was her dream. So we also were bringing my cousin, so she could keep an eye on my daughter, and she was going to take videos and pictures and things as well. So I text my cousin. This is like 10 o'clock at night. I text her. I was like, hey, I think I might be having some contractions. If you want to like pack a bag or whatever, I'll let you know if things progress. So she's like, okay. And then a few minutes, we call the midwives, let them know that I think labor has started. And then, I don't know, 20 minutes after, I start timing my contractions at this point, and they are just stacking up and getting stronger and stronger. So, but between them, my husband and I are running around, packing everything up, grabbing cameras, packing my clothes, just the final things. So I would stop and just kind of like breathe through and dance through a contraction, and then I would stop, and then I would like waddle around the house again, trying to like finish packing. And then like 20 minutes of this, I text my cousin and I'm like, hey, things are progressing quickly. You should head over, but don't rush. Like don't kill yourself. And my timing is wrong because I can't remember like what time things were happening. So then
we've established this from your previous birth that we don't know what time it is.
So my mom was going to have the kids, but she wasn't near enough to get here first because we thought it was going to be the next week because I had never been early. But my mother-in-law was on her way home from somewhere. So my husband called her, but she wasn't home either, but she was almost home. So she ran home to change. And at this point, I'm sitting on the toilet again, as we find out it's the dilation station. And boy, is it. It's because we called the midwife saying, okay, this is labor. We're packing up. We're going to come. And I was like, I have to go to the bathroom one more time. And so my husband grabs my daughter, puts her in the car, and I go to the bathroom one more time.
And you were planning to head to the hospital? The hospital with the midwife?
To Pennsylvania, 2 hours away, 2 hours and 15 minutes away.
You were headed to Pennsylvania from upstate New York?
Yes. Well, I'm Western New York. I'm not in upstate. But
okay. I mean,
it was a 2 hour
technicality. Yeah. I consider it upstate. So, I mean, Rochester, Buffalo, moving on. So, I did not realize that. So, this is a birth center?
It was part of it was like her home. And then she had another house right next to it where you could come and birth. And there were 3 different rooms with full bathrooms and showers and rooms for birthing tubs in each room.
Okay.
So that's where we were going to go. And so I had to go to the bathroom one more time. And then my husband was getting a little bit nervous and frustrated because he came in from putting my daughter in the car and said to himself, "Oh, that's the sound she makes when she's pushing." And this is too early. And he comes in the bathroom. He's like, "You have to get in the car right now." I'm like, I can't. Like, there's no reason to. And
had you realized at this point, like this, we're not going to make it. We're staying here.
Oh yeah, for sure. I knew that. So I told him, I'm like, start putting water in the bathtub. And
oh my gosh.
So he walks out to call the midwives. My mother-in-law comes into the bathroom and is like, "Are you sure like that you can't?" And she's like, "I know you can't, but like," yeah. So I was like, he's crowning. But like later going back, I was like, he wasn't crowning. I was holding his head in my hand. Like it wasn't crowning. Wow. Like his head was out. So I remember looking at my cousin standing in the doorway where she was taking pictures, and I was like, "I need a towel." And she said, she and I had the same thought at the same time, like, "Oh no, those are my good towels. We don't care." Because so she like whiffed me one of my good towels, And I handed it to she threw it to my mother-in-law, and I stood up at the same time, and we caught the baby, and he was out.
Wow.
In an hour and 50 minutes from my first contraction till he was out, it all happened so fast, I never even got time to get into my headspace. So then I didn't even get time to acknowledge that this was labor. And so just like looking at the baby, I was like, what happened? Like, what just happened? And I didn't remember until later. I showed my midwife the pictures and videos, and she was, oh, the cord was wrapped around his neck. And I was like, it was? And I'm like, oh yeah. I remember looking at him and being like, oh, the cord's wrapped around his neck. And I just unwrapped it. And then it was just like, oh my gosh, like I just did this. My husband missed the birth because he went out to grab his phone. And when he came back in, he goes, actually, the baby's here. And they were like, what?
Wow.
Because we had called them less than 20 minutes prior saying we were getting ready to leave. So even if I had left with the first contraction, we still wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
We would have had the baby in the middle of nowhere. So obviously God had that planned out too. And I never made it into the bathtub. I couldn't even walk the 2 steps off the toilet into the...
Because that baby was coming out.
My word, he was coming in hot.
Oh, so maybe that left uterus has a little more oomph in it.
I think it must. It has more room too, I guess, because they weren't stuck upside down.
Yes.
But, oh my word.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
My mother-in-law is so proud of that moment, and she just loves telling everybody that she got to help catch the baby.
Wow.
So she's just so happy about that. And then the midwives did travel out to us. They left as soon as they could. So the baby, he stayed attached to my placenta for over 2 hours until the cord stopped pulsing and it was white. And I had never had that experience either.
Wow. And so you delivered the placenta at home. Baby was healthy.
Yep, they coached my husband through that and things to look for, and they, taught my mother-in-law how to like gently push on my stomach to see if my uterus was shrinking down, and like they just, I don't know, it was really cool, honestly. And it was something that I've always wanted, but nothing that I probably would have ever really planned for.
Because I was going to ask you, did you always want to have a home birth?
Oh yeah, so badly. It was amazing to crawl into bed after that.
Yeah, because this was you finally got the home birth you always wanted.
And then the kids, and then after the baby was born, my husband goes, I have to go get our daughter. She was sitting in the car. She was. So it was fine that she missed that because we weren't panicked, but we weren't confident in what we were doing. So it was fine that she missed that part, but she was the first, the first kid to see the baby, and she was still so excited that she was there and right there for it and everything. Climbed into bed with us, and then my 2 boys got up to come see and blearily looked at the baby and was like, huh, and then they went back to bed. But yeah, it was awesome. That was definitely my best birth and best recovery.
And you did it all on your own.
Yep.
See, you could do it. It was you. You
do it. Yep.
It's you that has the magic sauce. It's not me. It's not the breech doctors. It's nobody. It's you. You, mama, have the magic sauce.
Yep. I know. At one point, I was like, nothing's wrong. I was like, nothing's wrong. Baby's just coming fast. But I'm like, I've had babies. I know what to do. Like,
yeah.
Like you hold the baby, you warm them up, and you feed them. And I was like, that's all I have to do. And then the midwives will come.
Yep. Yeah, and I've heard another midwife say she never gets worried about the fast deliveries, the ones that she might miss or the ones that are just coming fast, the precipitous ones. It's the ones that take a long time that she gets
then
nervous
you're in
about.
Distress. Yeah, you're distressed. The baby can get in distress. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it made sense to me too. I'm like, oh, that's reassuring. Like if for all of us that like have seen these portrayals of birth as this emergency situation and what could happen if baby comes out and there's no medical professional there, it's like most likely it's totally fine. And you just have to stimulate the baby, keep the baby warm, and feed the baby, like you said.
Yeah.
It's most likely that's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
What an incredible, powerful story. And you said your husband joked that you've done every kind of birth now.
Yes. He's like, what, are you trying to do that? I'm like, no, but it worked out.
Trying to check all the boxes. VBAC, check. Breech, check. Hospital, check. Birth center, check. Whole birth, check. You literally did
C-section.
it all. C-section, check. And what was your favorite? I think I can guess.
Oh, the home birth for sure.
100%. Now, are you planning to have more kids, or is 4 your
we're not planning on any more, no. But I wouldn't mind.
after that last one.
I'm like, oh, I guess we could do this again.
That's what happens when you have a birth like that. You're like, I could totally do this again.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm like, I don't want to go through pregnancy or postpartum, but if I could wake up 8 months pregnant and just have enough time to acknowledge I'm pregnant, I would do labor all the time. Even the one in the hospital. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't mind labor.
I love it. It's possible, ladies. Like, you can love your labor. You can.
I'm jealous when I hear other people are in labor. I'm like, and my friend too. We're like, they're in labor having a baby. We're like, what's wrong with us?
This is the mindset we're changing. We get to give birth. We get to experience this portal opening inside of our bodies and babies coming out and birth highs and oxytocin and love and bonding. Like, we get to birth. Mm-hmm. What a radical concept. If we could only convince the world, Sondra, like, this is why I wanted to have you on. This is why I wanted you to tell your story, because it is so revolutionary of just what's possible and what happens when you trust God and you trust the process, even with crazy situation like vbac, breech, uterine didelphys. I mean, look what God did. Look what you did. And it's not like I suffered through and survived kind of story. It's like, no. I would do that again and again and again kind of story. It was miraculous. It was glorious. Congratulations. And congratulations on your fourth. And I wish I was there for that one too. Yeah. But I'm even more excited that you got to experience that yourself and say that you did that all by yourself.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Pain Free Birth podcast today and sharing your story with listeners. And I'll put her Instagram below for any of you who feel like you want to reach out. And we'll have some other resources there too for breech birth and for the masterclass we mentioned. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners? If there's someone listening today that's like, I don't know if I can do this. I have XYZ, medical condition, or here's all the reasons I can't have the birth I really want to have. What would you want to say to those women?
It just, for my third, the breech vbac, it just seemed like there was always another door if I took the time to look for it. And just to keep trying all the options. I switched providers 3 times, and I would have switched again to get what I wanted, what I knew was going to work out best for me and my baby. And that, I don't know, God made our bodies to have babies, and we don't need people to help us. It's fine to have people there in case, but like, you can do it. And just, I don't know, find the people that are there for you.
Yes. Amen. I love it. You can do this. We were made to have babies. Go girl. Have the people there just in case.
Yeah.
If it reassured, and it's smart. Sometimes it's smart. If you want to deliver in a hospital, that was the right place for you for that birth. Mm-hmm. But have the people there that are going to support you. And don't be afraid to ask for what you want or tell them what you want. Mm-hmm. Like you did. I think what beautiful advice. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you guys on the next podcast.